Hello and welcome to the Elsie Smith Show. My guest today is Paul Roger. Paul is a qualified acupuncturist and a member of the British Register of Complementary Practitioners. He's passionate about traditional Chinese medicine and feels genuine care for all of his patients. His mission is to help them get rid of their pains, discomforts, and stresses so that they can make the most out of their life and enjoy it to the fullest. Results-driven, he keeps studying the various forms of acupuncture in addition to pursuing a diploma in Chinese osteopathy. He wanted to extend his knowledge about this millennia-old technique and therefore attended the foundation track of the Sichuan Balance Method Acupuncture in Paris in May 2017. And that unveiled yet another way of practicing acupuncture, providing patients with instant results. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
How did you get into acupuncture as a career choice?
So basically there were two things. There was a first, I would say like sign when I looked back on my life, and actually I realized that I had some occasions to help people. And whenever I had that opportunity, I took it. But it's like little like crumb trail over like maybe 10, 15 years. And then there was that, I would say like epiphany-like moment when I think that was in 2015, I realized that I don't want to spend my life in front of a computer in an office and wondering, okay, what have I made of my life? And therefore I decided to try to make my life into something meaningful and basically trying to help people. And so originally, because I had already explored various paths, such as, what I developed instinctually was hands-on healing. And I also, like through my researches, ended up as well being quite interested in shamanism. But I needed something more concrete and technical, if you want, because you can't. Well, you can just go out there and say, "Oh, I'm going to do shamanism," like shamanism healing.
Indeed.
But then, you're like, okay, what's the substance behind it? And so that's when I was researching various therapies. So the choice before the Chinese medicine was doing a shiatsu diploma, which was quite close. And then my wife, she had this amazing acupuncturist in Paris who was doing the Chinese osteopathy and the acupuncture. And she said, why don't you like my acupuncturist? He's got really good results. And so basically, then I was like, okay, let's give it a try. It's like I had only had maybe 3 acupuncture sessions at that time. And so I wasn't really too familiar with it. But then I was like, let's find a good school that can get me like a solid formation. And I went for it. And actually, it was amazing as soon as I started, all of that Chinese foreign knowledge just actually fell into place in my brain. But what I really like about it is that it's a logical system, but with a big emphasis on feeling and touching and perceiving. So you're actually using your logical hemisphere of the brain, which is for me quite developed because currently I'm in marketing job, so doing a lot of things with figures. And also the right hemisphere of the brain with a lot of, perception, which I actually developed with my hands-on healing, a bit of like spiritual path and everything. And it's really bringing back the humanity to the center of my life, like taking care of people, being really there for one person, one session at a time, like entirely dedicated to that person during the space of a session.
So for you, it is to have the balance between the science side and the more intuitive side.
Yes, exactly. It's really combining the two. It's like on one hand you're playing the detective, on the other hand you're really playing, I would say maybe like the empath, like really getting to understand that person really deeply and to really rebalance that person with your treatment.
Now, the acupuncture that you practice, How does that differ from what, for example, a physiotherapist or an osteopath do?
So, for example, on this side, basically everybody, if it were just a matter of putting needles, even mosquitoes would be acupuncturists. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually something I've heard on one of the videos on YouTube of one really good acupuncturist, how he explains it. And he says basically anybody can put a needle into someone's body, and that doesn't make them an acupuncturist. What really makes the difference is using the acupuncture tool with within the traditional Chinese philosophy with diagnosis at the center, whether it is like a traditional medicine diagnosis, as I will elaborate later, or with whether it is a meridian diagnosis, which I use with the balanced method acupuncture. And for example, if you want, so for physiotherapists and osteopaths, they see, oh, that person has got a shoulder problem, so I'm going to put the needle in that shoulder. And that's fine. That's actually a perfectly good way of treating shoulders. But for example, if that person is really in a lot of pain, they don't want to have any needles or anything near that area. And that's why as acupuncturist, you can actually, oh, that guy has shoulder pain, let's relieve it instantly by needling the right ankle, for example. And, basically, I had a patient who was last week who was stuck to this position. Three needles, and 5 seconds later, he was like that.
Goodness.
So we managed to have 95% improvement in one session. And it's visible instantly. It's like the benefit of that method is that instead of having the needle and having to stay there and endure the treatment and potentially the pain, it's like the person can really feel, actually my shoulder feels better, and then test it and it's like, well, I can move now. So that's yeah, so that's for the physical issues. And otherwise the traditional medicine diagnosis is really good for the internal issues. So as I will say later, with a pulse and tongue, it's like, oh, actually, you haven't been drinking enough water recently, or maybe you've eaten too salty. And that diagnosis is really at the core of the medicine, because then the needles are actually accessory, because that person, you can actually give dietary advice, and within week, 2 weeks, that person will have actually corrected the condition themselves, just by rebalancing how they eat. There is much more to acupuncture than just putting a needle in. It's really the frame within which you use a tool that really makes a difference.
And because you look at the whole picture, you do not necessarily go, you actually go much deeper, not so superficial.
Yes, exactly. Because, for example, some lower back pain could actually be caused by digestive disorders. So it's like you really need to have the whole emotion, and also that person might have the lower back pain coming constantly every week, but that's actually because they've got a stressful job and they actually internalize that stress, which translates into pain. So until you help them with dealing with the stress by offering a nice relaxing session, there are some points for stress as well, and giving some advice like for them to take time for themselves and to like chill out. And then the stress will go away and the pain will go away as well.
Now, from what I could understand, acupuncture is part of Chinese medicine, which you studied. What is Chinese medicine?
So Chinese medicine, as the name indicates, it's born in China. The first big text is dated from 2000 years ago. And it's actually a medicine that is contemporary to the Hippocratic medicine, which we had in Europe, and which was actually progressively forgotten and ditched by modern science. But actually, when you compare on paper, the two medicines had concepts that are really similar. So if things had gone differently in Europe, if there had been a development and preservation of that Hippocratic medicine, then maybe we would have come up with maybe not needles, but similar ways of diagnosing people and taking the whole into consideration when treating a condition. traditional Chinese medicine, it's a reform of the ancient Chinese medicine that has been done by the Mao government in 1950 after the Second World War. And that was that. So basically, they gathered like the most elite and herbalists and acupuncturists at that time, and they condensed the knowledge into like a very practical system. And then that system is now has been broadcast to the world, and that's what people are mainly using.
Okay, so Chinese medicine is the overarching concept, and within that you have acupuncture.
Yes, exactly. So there are actually 5 pillars to the Chinese medicine. So
Yeah.
acupuncture is part of one. Then you have moxibustion, which uses a plant to apply some external indirect heat on the skin. And you have the Qigong, which is quite popular and developing more and more. So basically, the Qigong is the Chinese yoga, if you want. So that's what we're putting it. Then you have the Tuina or massage. And then the last one is the herbs, which is about 50% of the it's the first modality of treatment in China.
So what is acupuncture? How would you describe acupuncture as such?
So going back to the definition, acupuncture is basically the insertion of a needle in the skin. The acupuncture needle is actually 16 times smaller than the hypodermic needle to which we're used to. So it's as thick as a cat's whisker. So as you can see, it's really...
That's a relief.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people are actually scared of needles, and then they come to see me and they're like, okay, I'll give it a try, especially when I've got them lying on their front and when I'm needling their back and they can't see. And they're like, is it clean yet? Like, yes, you actually have like about 20 needles on your back. And they were like, I didn't feel anything. They were like, yes, because it's actually not painful. And so acupuncture, so within Chinese medicine, we use it mainly on what is called the meridians. So I've got them outlined on the chart behind me. But basically, it's it's the equivalent of the nervous or blood system, except that it's for the energy of the body. For example, in pregnancy, women can have sometimes the linea nigra, like the black line on the belly.
Yes,
that's actually straight over a meridian. It's the conception meridian that runs all across the front.
Yeah.
And so it is actually like a potential manifestation of the meridian that you can see, because there's no vein that goes directly just on the belly like that, which would actually make the generate that black line actually.
That's fascinating.
So you can see, and meridians basically so energy runs everywhere. It's like blood. It's just the meridians are the main arteries and veins, if you want. But between two meridians, you still have some energy circulating, and you can actually find some points as well. So the points and the energy is not only limited to the meridians. And so in total, you've got 12 main meridians and 8 additional meridians.
And you apply the acupuncture on these meridians based on your diagnosis?
Yes, exactly. So within my practice, whether I use because I use 2 styles of acupuncture, which I will come back later, but within the traditional Chinese medicine frame and within the balance method frame, I use meridians for both of the treatments.
And acupuncture is not applied in isolation. It's part of a bigger picture. So it's not the only treatment you use.
No. So as I said before, there are other methods. So for example, usually when you do an acupuncture degree or diploma, so first you you learn how to do the acupuncture, which is sometimes the main bit. Some acupuncturists do the herbs, which I haven't done because the legislation is there are some barriers in place in Europe and the UK, but we have some other things. So we usually learn cupping. So this is like kind
Oh,
of like a
yes.
reverse massage. So you would
Yeah,
actually put
yeah.
like a flame in the cup and then apply the cup on the patient's back or body part. Usually it's the back because it's quite nice and convenient. And a vacuum will
Yeah.
be created inside the cup, sucking the
Mm.
skin in. Not too strongly though. You have to be mindful of that, otherwise
Yeah.
you end up with blisters. And it's actually a really nice way of relaxing the tissues instead of always pressing and generating the tension as normal massage does. This one actually takes the pressure away from the body into the cup,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's really good for removing heat. In addition, if
Okay.
the patient has got, for example, like a cold condition, like has like loose bowels or something, you might want to
Mm.
use moxa. So it's a plant. So it's from the mugwort plant. Moxa
Oh,
is
yes.
actually
Mokwa.
like a powder, and it's then rolled into sticks or kind of like cigar-like aspect. So you would actually
Yeah.
light one end, and then with the other end, well, you would take uh, the stick into your hand, and then you would actually hover the heat over the body part you want to treat. So, for example, it
Mm.
can be used to bring heat to across the stomach or to a particular acupuncture
Mm.
point, which will then transfer the heat to the part you want to treat. So you
Yeah.
have the stick. It comes as well in shape of little cones. So this one you can actually put it on top of the needles. So you can combine the two. You have this one as well, which is another type of cone, which is actually a stick-on
Yeah.
cone. And so that's really practical. And then if you're working in an environment where there are some fire detectors or smoke detectors,
Mhm.
you can use the smokeless moxa. So this is a cone of smokeless moxa. So it's a bit more mineral, not so herbal, but it works well as well. So the last thing is the thing that I'm studying, which is Chinese osteopathy, but that's another realm of knowledge
Mm.
as well.
Goodness. So it looks like you've got a whole bag of tools that you can use.
Yes,
But you did
exactly.
indicate you did indicate that you use two different types of acupuncture. So it's not just a matter of putting in the needles.
No, exactly. It's as I say, it's anybody can put needles into some into someone else's body or their own body. The main thing is what you do with it. So within traditional Chinese medicine, which is the first style you learn at school, um, so for example, you would do mainly, well, you would do a combination of local points. For example, I've got a shoulder pain, so I'm gonna just needle the shoulder. And some distal points. So you learn as well, oh, actually, this point is quite good for shoulder pain, so you're going to use it as well. So it's kind of
Mm.
like, okay, that should sort it, but it's not maybe precise enough to really have the optimal result. However,
Mm. Mm.
the traditional Chinese medicine works really well for internal conditions. So for example, if you
Mm.
have a digestive disorder, like loose bowels, for example. Then with the diagnosis, it will be like, oh, okay, so you have that pattern, like, for example, dampness in the spleen, which is quite common in the UK because it's damp and people eat a lot of sugar and fatty food as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I would select some points both on the limbs and maybe on the stomach. And that would
Mm.
actually treat the condition quite effectively. And so the
Okay.
other style of acupuncture, which is really interesting and really impressive for people to experience, is the balance method acupuncture. So that was actually created by the Dr. Richard Tan. He spent his life researching it, and unfortunately, he passed away in 2015. And now there are three students that actually teach the system across the whole world. So they go like to Asia, America, Europe to teach that method. And
Wow.
basically with that method, so it's not so much a diagnosis in terms of organs, tongue and pulse. It's more a diagnosis in terms of meridian. So for example, if I have that shoulder problem, then it's like, okay, so on the shoulder, where is the pain? If the pain is here, that's a large intestine meridian that's getting impacted. If the pain is here, that's a small intestine meridian getting impacted. And if the pain is here, that's the lung meridian getting impacted. And that system actually works by a system of balance of meridians. So it's like, okay, that meridian is balanced by this meridian. And in terms of, and you're also going to look for likeliness in terms of anatomical structure. And actually, so in the shoulder, you have a lot of bone, as you can feel at the top. You have some tendons with all the rotator cuffs, and you have a bit of muscle. And so that's why you're going to be like, okay, so I can balance the large intestine meridian with another meridian, probably the stomach meridian, which run down the ankle. And like actually, the ankle is kind of like the shoulder. It's a joint, and there's a lot of bones, tendons, and a bit of muscles. So in terms of both meridian and anatomical structure, it's really similar. And so that's why you get really good result by using the ankle to treat the shoulder. And
fascinating.
And with instant results. So someone who is blocked like that, you put the needle in. If you've hit the spot, they will be like, whoa.
Fascinating. So there's again this picture in my mind that a tiny part of your body is actually like a hologram of your entire body.
So for that system, you have two ways of doing the balance. You have the mirror. So for example, so if I do it simply, so this is my foot, this is my knee, and this is my hips. Or this can be actually my foot, this is still my knee, and this is my hips. So that's the mirror system. You also have the puppet system. So this is my head, this is my throat, this is my belly button, and this is more the genitals. And it can be reversed as well. So this can be my head, this is my belly button, and this is the genitals. So you have these two mirror and images which you use in that system.
It's amazing how it all fits together in different ways. So when you do your diagnosis, how would you do that?
So for the diagnosis, there are 4 aspects to the traditional Chinese diagnosis. First, there is the inquiring, because the patient comes to you, you're asking, okay, what's wrong? What's going on? The patient will actually describe some symptoms to you, and that will give you a first layer of information for you to figure out what would be the best way of resolving these symptoms and actually resolving the cause generating these symptoms. Because basically, that's the other difference with allopathic medicine, is that allopathic medicine deals with the symptoms. It's going to mask the headache or masks the belly pain. And actually, acupuncture will, it's like almost, I wouldn't say the symptoms are irrelevant because they're actually really good clues as to what is going on. But for example, you have 5 symptoms all linked to a cause. If you can deal with the cause, then the 5 symptoms disappear. So you don't, you don't have to treat 5 different things. If everything fits together, you can find what we call in Chinese medicine the pattern of disharmony or dysfunction. If you can find that pattern, everything goes away and the person is fine again. So after the inquiring, you have, well, so it's a bit of a funny one because in traditional texts, it's listening and smelling, which is actually the same word in Chinese. But nowadays, we don't really smell anymore. Like, well, it can be really weird. But in, like, I guess 2000 years ago, and even in most recent time, they used to do that. Now it's mainly listening to the tone of voice of the person, whether is it shaky, is it withdrawn, is it actually boisterous and really loud? And that will give you another clue. And then the main things, the two ones that are really proper to Chinese medicine are the tongue, which is actually like a map of the organs. So you have the heart near the tip, then you have the lungs, then you have liver and gallbladder on the side, you have stomach and spleen in the middle, and you have kidney and small intestines at the back. And there are four things to consider on the tongue. There is the tongue's body shape. There is the tongue's body color, because it can actually vary. If it's really pale, for example, along with cracks on the surface, it can actually mean that there is a blood deficiency. So potentially someone who just had like really heavy periods, that could happen. And then there is the coating color. So we all have, if we look at, we never look at our tongue. It's like, oh, what is that thing? And actually, it's really interesting because when you look closely enough, it's not gross. It's actually like a mine of information. And so if you look at that coating, you know, and especially if someone is actually trying to brush their coating away, and it comes because it comes back really quickly. Have a look at the color. So whether it's white, which could indicate cold, or yellow, which could indicate heat. And also the thickness of the coatings. For example, if you have like so a thin white coating is normal, and to have a normal shaped pink tongue is normal. Then if the tongue is actually really red, that's heat. So you see, it's actually very logical. It's like, oh, red, heat. If it's puffy and if the tongue is really wet, then there is a problem with the fluid metabolism. If the tongue is really dry and cracked and there is no coating, or if there is some yellow coating, then there is a heat problem or dryness problem. So you see, it's really, you just observe and take the most likely conclusion. It's not like, oh, it's red, so it could be something complicated. It's like, oh, red heat. Okay, which organs are affected? And then you build your diagnosis like that. And then there is, last one is the pulse. So with the pulse, you have actually 6 positions on the wrist, like this. So you have one a place for each organ. So this one is heart, liver, kidney, which is kidney yin. Well, it could be, usually I say to people, that's your left kidney, to simplify, which is not technically true, but that's what I say. And then you have the lung, spleen, and right kidney or kidney yang. And basically so it's not so much, you know, like the count of, like the speed of the pulse, which is what the GP usually take. It's important, but it's not, I would say, the most important. It's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a more qualitative aspect. So is it really strong? At what level is it? Is it superficial, middle, deep? And which organ is affected? For example, it's like you can have like it could be quite weak on the kidney, so that person is likely tired. It can be really booming on the liver, so that person, you know, it's she's a bit short fused, or there is some maybe hypertension as well. And then usually heart and lungs, they could be fine. It's like if the heart, if the pulse at the heart level is a bit weak, it can be like, okay, that person might not be laughing enough, or maybe there is like a lot of internalization of emotions. And however, a really good thing to detect whether you're starting to fall sick. So even when you haven't even had the symptoms, like maybe you had one shiver and then you were like, oh, that's fine. And actually, if that pulse is superficial, so if you can actually feel it just by hovering your finger over it, your index over it, you're like, oh, actually, you're going to come down with a cold in 3 days. And so that's what you can actually, that's the big thing about Chinese medicine. You can actually prevent things from happening by detecting them early enough. Rather than waiting to have flu and then needing some really strong medication to get rid of it.
My goodness, yes. That's really very useful to know. Now, you've done your diagnosis now. You've looked at the tongue. You've asked all your questions. Now you use the needles. How do you use those needles?
So for the needles, so they come in various size, because I would say not shapes, but actually traditionally there are 9 shapes of needles, but we tend to use one nowadays. So that's the filiform needles. It's actually just a steel wire. It's like I had some patient asking me, okay, is there any special product in the needles? And I was like, no, actually, it's just just a bit of steel wire that's shaped as the needle. So they come in various sizes. This one is 1.25 centimeter, and this one is 5 centimeter. And basically, the smaller ones are actually convenient for the wrist because they are lighter, and since there is less skin to hold on to, it's quite convenient.
Yeah.
And the 5 centimeter ones, I usually use them more on the bum area, back, or thighs. And so each needle they should normally come into individually wrapped sterile container. And so the one I use are in a tube, just because with a tube, so you've got a little plastic bit to remove, and then you've got the needle in the tube, you put it on the skin, and then you just stab the needle, and then it stays in.
Yeah.
And otherwise, so that's it. So the tube actually enable the practitioner to guarantee almost like a pain-free, really quick insertion. You also have, but the drawback of the tube is that it limits your how you can place the needle. For example, if you need to place it transverse to the skin, happen at some point, it's harder to then tap. And so you might want to do some what we call free needling, which is basically where you're gonna pull gently the skin a bit, and then you're gonna insert the needle quickly, so that you can actually needle the point as you want.
Okay. And then when you put the needle in, it kind of activates the meridian, the energy in the meridian?
Yes, exactly. Right? So with the needles, you don't bring anything from the outside to the body. You don't bring, like, maybe people could think that you can bring minerals from the needles, but no, actually. The acupuncture points are just like on a remote control for your body. Okay. So like, for example, that point is really well known, and it's really good for headache or face ache or any kind of pain in the head.
Yeah.
So by pressing or needling that point, you're actually going to send the information to your body like, okay, let's stop the pain. And so it's really like a remote control. But it's actually your body that uses its energy to relay the signal and undertake the change. There's nothing brought from outside of the body. There is, of course, like a minimal exchange of energy between the acupuncturist and the patient, which actually reinforces the signal. And that's why, for example, when I do self-acupuncture on myself, the treatment is not as strong as if it was someone else doing it. Because when it's something like the body detects whether it's something familiar or something a bit foreign, and when it's foreign, it reinforces the signal.
That's fascinating. So you really just activate our own healing ability in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And for example, with the balance method acupuncture, I completed only the foundation track for now, and there is like an advanced to cover you would say like the last 5% of the cases you might get through the door with a more advanced method. But we got given some like a specific protocol, so like a set of points for fever, and that is guaranteed to bring the fever down within seconds. And that set of points is actually so specific that if you use any other point other than the points that are listed, then you're gonna perturb the order, and then basically it's like think of it as a computer. It's like you enter like like a code that's going to trigger a specific process. If you add one letter to that code, it's going to do something else completely.
Yeah. There's just so much behind what you've told us. Now, if people want to have training in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and they ask you, where would you send them for that training?
So basically, there are various really good schools all around the UK. But personally, I've been trained at the Academy of Oriental Medicine based in Chelmsford, just near the M25, so right after the Dartford crossing, if you're familiar with London.
Yeah.
Where I was taught by Dr. Phil Laws and Graham Chandler. So I learned the acupuncture with Dr. Phil Laws, and I'm now studying the Chinese osteopathy with Dr. Graham Chandler. But the passion of these people for that medicine and the potential it has, it's really, it's like it lights a spark and a fire within you. It's like they speak about it with such passion and have such skill and knowledge that you really want to learn more and more and more. And what is, as you say, it's like, I don't know how much information I've actually given already. I know it's quite a lot to take in, but within that Chinese medicine discipline, there are so many doors to open. Just within that, it's like you open that single door, you stay within the Chinese medicine, and it's like Kung Fu school. It's like, oh, I want to learn Kung Fu. And then people are like, okay, what style? And actually, in ancient, in ancient China, acupuncture was just like that. So there are less traditions now after everything that happened in China that are still alive today, but there are still some. And so you can just like very specific styles of acupuncture from these people.
And if people want to get hold of you particularly and ask you more questions or get treatment from you, that would be from your website.
So basically, right now I'm based in Red Hill in Surrey. And you can get in touch with me at via my Facebook page, Yggdrasil Acupuncture, or on my website, which is also called Yggdrasil Acupuncture.
And I've got the URL for that on the screen now.
Yeah, perfect.
Yggdrasil Acupuncture. That there's something Welsh about that. Is that right? You're of French origin, so how do you bring it all together?
Yes, so it's not exactly Welsh. It's more Norse inspiration. So
okay.
The thing is that right before coming to the UK, I got into Norman reenactment. So I'm originally from Normandy, which is the part of France that got invaded by the Vikings and given to the Vikings to stop them from invading Paris and France further, actually. And so since I came to the UK, I joined a Viking group. And that's really a big part of my life, which actually you have, again, that human connection that you tend to lose nowadays with all the digital technologies and stuff. It's like things are getting more and more separated and superficial. Whereas when you spend like a weekend or a week just like basically camping 11th century style, you find again that sense of community and humanity that we tend to lose. And so basically that's I would say that's a third of my life. And the project with the acupuncture is really to bring everything together, rather than just having, work life, family life, hobby life. It's like bringing everything together.
Yeah. Paul, that's been really fascinating. I've learned so much again, and I really appreciate the time you've spent on this. Thank you for helping us out there.
Well, thank you for hosting me and having the interview. I know I tend to speak a lot about acupuncture once I'm launched, but
you're obviously passionate about it, and I love that. So thank you for that. And thank you for listening to us. Well, I'll be back next week, Sunday, same place, same time, Sunday at 4 o'clock with another fascinating topic. Thank you and goodbye.